Hey friends, welcome to the Weekly, where we recap what happened on our weekend services here at Calvary and connect it to your real life lived Monday through Friday. My name is Thomas, and I'm here with my co-host, Pastor Jay Ewing, with a special guest as well, Zack Thompson.
Hey Zach, how's it going, my friend?
I am doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday.
Yes.
Officially, Calvary has regathered in a large group that is safe and simple.
That's right, don't forget that, safe and simple.
How cool is that? It's back, the large group gathering.
It's great to see people in the large group gathering, although it's really fun to see all the home groups come together, sit together in pockets, little pods around the building.
That's cool.
Yeah, and to have a group of people not regather, but gather on the new Thornton campus must have been awesome.
It was incredible. Gary and I were joking, like, when do we say the Thornton campus started? Was it this past Sunday? Was the first time we got to go? Was it the Sunday before where it was the trial run? Was it a year ago when the cohort met for the first time? All I know is it was so great to be part of it, and been joking, how great is it that Calvary Thornton waited for me to get here before they decided to actually hold services.
See, that's what I was going to say. That's why I wouldn't go with any previous date before you got here, Zach.
Yeah.
Is nothing really existed before you got here, did it?
I mean, I can't think of anything.
No, I'm calling it the official date. January 17th, 2021, Calvary Thornton hosts its first service.
And who knew in 2020 of January that this would happen?
I think just Jesus.
Only Jesus, my
that's
friend.
right.
Only Jesus.
How amazing is that? Last year, we didn't even know about the Thornton campus.
Yeah,
Think about that.
it's
And
true.
through a series of events, God led us out at Thornton.
How crazy is that?
And Zach's here. So
Yeah.
Zack Thompson is in the studio. Zach, if you don't know, is the newest member of the Calvary Bible staff. He is the pastor of the Thornton campus. You and Emily came out from California.
That's right. We're one of those coming over from California, bringing housing price raises and traffic with us.
Thank you. Thank you. But you already drive a Subaru, don't you?
With a Colorado Avalanche sticker on it. So
Whoa.
I'm already official.
Yeah, so explain that. People might be interested in that.
I assume you mean the Avalanche, not the Subaru.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, it's like all the other ones that are out
Yeah.
here. The Avalanche fandom started because I was an impressionable 8-year-old in 1996. So there's math being done right now. And they won the Stanley Cup their first year after being in Quebec with the Nordiques. And I was being rebellious, and my dad, a big Kings fan. I couldn't be. And so I chose my own team, and I went with Joe Sakic and the newly crowned champions, the Colorado Avalanche. Jumped on that bandwagon, and I have not found a way off yet.
That's good. I remember being an impressionable young child when the Avs came, and I thought this is perfect that Canada gives us a team, and then the U.S. wins the Stanley Cup.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
America.
Yeah. That's cool. So outside of professional life of ministry, what are you interested in? What do you do? What do you like to spend your time doing?
Yeah. So Emily and I love getting outside. We love hiking, which we've heard there's 1 or 2 hikes in Colorado. Is that right?
To start off with,
They're all
Gotcha.
flat too.
Yeah. So excited about going on some of those. We love traveling back when that was a thing. So excited to get to do that again, to see new places, see how people live. We have a dog that we show way too much love for, at least until God gives us kids, and we're excited for when that happens. I love watching really, really good movies, and also really, really bad movies. I don't have much time for the middle ground there. And then, love learning. Always reading one too many books, listening to too many podcasts, especially since I could just tune into the Weekly and get all that I need.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
All right, so hold on a second. I'm going to put you on the spot,
Yes.
and we're just going to create some filters to view you through.
Okay.
So list one of the good movies
So the best movie I've ever seen.
besides The Passion of the Christ.
Correct.
Or the nativity story.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so
okay.
take those off the table.
Wow, now I'm really limited without those. So I go Seven Samurai by Kura Kurosawa. It's a Japanese film from the 50s, and it's 3 hours long of epicness. It is so good. It is so good.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, now give me a list off the bad bad movies?
So there's some of the classic ones, like basically grew up watching Mystery Science Theater 3000. I don't know if we have any viewers of that, where they make fun of some of the awful movies. So Mono's Hands of Fate is truly abysmal, and it is a joy to watch as a result.
Wow.
Great. Yeah, wow.
2 movies I've never heard of or never seen.
Jay is exclusively in the genre of Nicolas Cage and
Gotcha.
Steven Seagal.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, totally, man. And Tom Hanks. Don't forget Tom Hanks.
Oh my gosh.
I love
All
a good Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah, that's good.
So those are some extracurricular activities. What do you have your degrees in? I know you're super smart. You're probably the smartest person in the room. What degrees do you have?
I would only be the smartest person in the room if you guys were in other rooms while we were recording this.
You must be the most humble person in the room too.
That is true.
Outside of
Absolutely
myself.
True. Absolutely true. The most humble person in the room. So I went to the same school for 3 different times. I went to Biola University for my undergrad. Got my bachelor's in biblical studies. And then tried to find a different seminary, and they reeled me in with giving me a steep discount to go and get my Master of Divinity at Talbot School of Theology, Biola's seminary that's there. And then I tried to get away again. I was all set to go somewhere else, and then I came back one more time for my Master of Theology that I got from there. Emphasis in historical theology.
All right. Then you're the person that we want on this show today, because we got some questions.
And you're going to be the host next week.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Yep.
All right, so we're in this IM series looking at the statements that Jesus makes in the book of John. And these are statements about his personhood, who he is, and he's connecting himself to God himself and then the larger, older, broader story that God has told throughout history. And so one of the questions that we've been asking is, why do we keep going back to the Old Testament to unpack who Jesus is? So if someone were to ask you that question, Zach, why do you guys keep going back to the Old Testament every single week when Jesus is making these statements in the New Testament? What would be some good direction for them?
Yeah, that's good. I also think you slipped up a little bit and gave the answer in your question right there, because he's connecting himself to the broader story of what God has been doing. That Jesus is not a plan that God came up with in 4th century BCE, where he was going to create a new system. It was something that was planned from the beginning, and God showed us a little bit of those plans that we got to see fully realized in Jesus coming. So in returning to what God has already shown, it's pointing that he is the one that God has promised, and showing where God has promised those things. That's why he keeps returning to some of those to show who it is that he is, as we see in the Old Testament. Beyond the fact as well that we're reading the Gospel of John, and what was John reading before he wrote? And he was reading the Old Testament. So he is connecting the life of Jesus to what he knows, and Jesus is quoting what he would have been reading as well, the Old Testament. We see that in Luke with him reading from the Isaiah scroll. These are his scriptures, and he is teaching us who God is from the scriptures that he knows.
All right, that should get us all excited to crack open our Old Testament. So many Christians, I think, are kind of afraid of the Old Testament. It seems like foreign ground. But if you really want to see the New Testament come alive and Jesus in a more crystal clear way, you really want to know your Old Testament scriptures.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some ways, Thomas, you would recommend or Zach, recommend for reading the Old Testament if you're unfamiliar or haven't been there in a long time?
So one of the things I would suggest is just start reading it. So one of the ways that you get familiar is just repetition. And so just opening up the Bible, reading those stories that maybe you've never read before, start circling themes that show up, people's names, certain topics. One of those things that we traced this last week was light and darkness. That theme of light and darkness shows up throughout all of the Old Testament. And when you're reading it, you just start circling those things, taking note of those. And then it's really fun to see, as you start reading the New Testament, those themes addressed, some of those stories addressed when Jesus starts talking about what he's doing, why he's doing it, and you make those connections for yourself in some of the prophets. So one of the things I would just say is just do it, don't be afraid of it, and start circling everything that seems to be repetitive, and then also circle everything that you want to ask questions about.
Yeah, and I know that we kind of get in this mode when we're reading through the New Testament that we're just trying to see what the words are going on there. But most good Bibles that we have will show us where this quotation comes from or where this allusion that Jesus is using. Actually turn and read those, because a lot of times the context of that Old Testament passage will give us so much more richness of what is going on here. I think of Jesus when he's on the cross in Mark, and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When he's quoting from Psalm 22 there. If we read through Psalm 22, we get to this beauty at the end of it that talks about God saving his people. It's more than just a cry of pain, which we could just get like, oh, great, he's quoting this time of pain from the Old Testament. No, he's quoting God's plan of salvation, and we miss that if we don't turn back and see what this quotation is coming from.
Cool. Those are really cool. I would say just the addition is read it in community. So find some others who want to read it along with you, and make a plan on how to read it. And so that you can bounce those ideas, those questions, those observations off each other as you read the Old Testament, because we've all been there. The lone wolf Christian gets all the way to Leviticus and then dies out very quickly.
Oh man, I love Leviticus. Yeah. When you read the story of Leviticus, all I think about is God's mercy and provision.
There you go.
Anyway, all right, off track.
Yeah, well, you're one of the few who've gotten through Leviticus on their own, then. But community is super important to keep you motivated, growing, thinking, praying, seeing where God is actually interacting in the text.
That's good.
All right, so you guys were on the campus. You and Erie, Jay, and Zach, you were out in Thornton. Gary preached in Thornton. You also watched the online message that was posted. I preached that. What sorts of questions came up in your communities, or questions about what they heard that we should unpack for application?
Yeah, that's good. As I was walking away, I feel like we did such a good job, again, just from the two that I saw, of defining what is this light and showing how beautiful the light is that Jesus is providing us to illuminate the darkness and show us of where God is working on us to make us more and more like him. I felt like we were assuming a little bit of what darkness is. I think we can all kind of throw out, yeah, darkness is bad. We got that really, really well. And it's sin of some sort. But was wondering, can we spend a little bit of time defining what do we mean by darkness, or what does Jesus mean by darkness in these passages?
That's a great question. I think that's something we definitely did not spend enough time on Sunday. And you're right, it's kind of assumed knowledge. So when we think about light and darkness, remember we talked about those being two different domains, that those are regions that people either live in or belong to, where Jesus says, okay, I've rescued you from the domain of darkness to bring you to the kingdom of his Son, this kingdom of light. And so as we talk about light, which is the opposite of darkness, and in light we talked about being the truth, holiness, purity, goodness, rightness, beauty. The darkness is the opposite reflection of that. Mm-hmm. So as you're alluding to, absolutely, we're talking about sin. We're seeing darkness from the early pages of Genesis, chaos, disorder. There's not life there. And so when we start thinking about biblical darkness, we're thinking about separation from light. So you're talking about death, sin, chaos, disruption, things that produce shame and guilt. Those are kind of key adjectives or descriptions of biblical darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to this, but Genesis 1 is like, out of the chaos, God spoke, and first thing was light. So, that's a great metaphor for whatever is chaotic in your life, whatever is like truly not right or unhealthy in the sense of choices or stories or all those things. That's darkness, I would say, for the most average listener.
Yeah, and probably one thing that I would probably add to that is these aren't just neutral domains, that there's actually a kingdom of darkness that has an energy behind it that is antagonistic toward the kingdom of light. So when we think of darkness, we think of this present darkness in which there's a spiritual force that's actively against the things that God is for. And so it's deceit, those lies, those things that are trying to corrupt the aspects of life and light. What would you add to that, Zach?
No, I think that's good, especially as we are seeing what does this light mean and what is the purpose of the light. As we're hearing what is contrary to God's goodness of living a life that reflects God's character to the world. It's the parts of us that we think of sometimes immediately, like this is an outlier of that, or this is something that's going on, and terrified of people find that out, or this is the part of me that I feel conviction about, or even if we're not putting that title on it, like I lay at night and think, why did I do this? Those are the things that we see as darkness, because they're not in God's good light, illuminating these areas of where we can grow and be more like Him.
Yeah, I think building off that, if we start with the premise of this, there's two domains, light and darkness. And first and foremost, that's life and death. And then you kind of unpack what is it that produces more and more life, which is what's true, what's lovely, what's right, what's good, what's beautiful, and then what produces death. And you kind of went back, there's sin and disease and chaos and all of these other attributes. I think what's challenging is, and I think Jesus is getting to this point, is why have I been so willing to settle into darkness? Like we talked about this earlier last week, Zach, where he's taking physical examples and trying to extrapolate spiritual principles out of them. And one of the physical examples is darkness, and no one's really comfortable in darkness.
Yeah.
And the first thing I think of when I'm in the darkness is I'm probably just going to die. Like there's something in the darkness that's going to get me. I'm going to die. I should probably turn on a nightlight. At least that's what my kids think too. And then there's something about the spiritual darkness though, that I just don't feel that same urgency to turn on the lights, turn on the spiritual lights, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads us to a question then: how do we live as children of the light? How do we transform? How does our stories transform to more and more light and choosing of light?
I think first and foremost, you got to know that Jesus' words are light. So Jesus is light. He's life. That means his words are light. And you have to, so to speak, turn them on to see clearly what's going on. One of the passages we quoted on Sunday was from Psalm 119. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. So it illuminates what's really around you and then kind of shows what's going forward. Later on in Psalm 119, I believe it's verse 130, where the psalmist says, the unfolding of your word is light. It gives understanding to the simple. And so first and foremost, we have to recognize, okay, we need a light. We're actually living in darkness. And the light is the words of God to illuminate the reality of what's going on. One of the stories I shared with Zach was my brothers and I don't know if I was 8, 10, I can't remember. We're sitting in my parents' basement, and we think we're the bee's knees because we just went down to the local supermarket and got some chips and some Tostitos cheese dip. And we went down and we watched a movie in the basement on this like little 13-inch TV VCR combo. And we turned off the lights like a big old movie theater would, and we're like eating chips and this dip. And then I just feel like there's something on my hand. And so we turn the lights on and realize that this whole slew of ants have crawled across the floor into the cheese dip. And I've been dipping my chip in the cheese and eating ants. And it's the first thing you have to recognize is the lights are on, and now I'm exposed for what's really happening.
Right.
So that's the words of God, is to say, okay, I think I'm in darkness. Lord, would you illuminate my life? Would you turn on the lights, so to speak, so that I can see where I'm standing and where I should be going?
Yeah, that's really good, but that's a hard thing to say because usually the exposure of light brings upon some consequences, or at least the thought maybe that shame, guilt is going to happen from these things, right?
Yeah, to conversation that you and I had earlier, Jay, about the practice of living as children of the light with this practice of confession.
Right. It's 1 John. 1 John actually, 9 and 10. It's just if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And if we say we have not sinned, we make him out a liar, and his word is not in us. And what John is trying to do is a practice of confession actually reveals the darkness in us and also brings about more light into what God wants to really do in our hearts and lives.
It can be hard to confess, right? Because you think you're going to be harmed.
Yeah, totally.
And there is some pain and consequence to making confessions, is there not?
Yeah, and it's always a risk. Like, am I going to be shamed for this? Someone going to hold this over my head the rest of our relationship? That is going through your head when you're confessing sin.
But if we don't confess sin and we leave it unattended in our life, what's the consequence of not confessing this darkness, so to speak, in our life?
Yeah, I think we have, we could see in people's life that it just festers and it grows and it grows and it just gets so much worse. And even if we don't recognize that it is, in your illustration, if we're not, once the light comes on, it illuminates an area where we have a need. If we're not addressing it, we're just dipping the chip back in and eating more ants. And that is just so much worse.
Gross,
for
man.
it to do. I know.
And a little more protein.
So let me change the illustration then. So I think about it like this. So this morning I had to drive my wife's car, which we're already doing a hard enough time with our California license plates. Just every drive is an adventure. Are people going to run us off the road? I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But she drives this small, tiny Honda Fit, while my car, the Subaru Crosstrek, I'm seeing all over the place. I'm not seeing a lot of Honda Fits around, and so I'm driving this thing. And the reason why I'm doing that is when I left the office yesterday out in Thornton, I recognized that, well, I had a nail in my tire, and it was really, really deflated. And there was part of me, because there was last night I had a dinner meeting to go to. Today's full of meetings here at Erie. Tomorrow I'm at Boulder for most of the day, and then Thursday a ton of stuff back at Thornton. Part of me is like, can I just get enough air in there to last until Friday? It's my day off. But I can't do that, because I was just thinking about how much worse things could go. I've had a tire blow out on me before, where you lose control of your car and you're just spinning out at the mercy of what's going on around you. Thankfully, I didn't plow in any cars, but that's playing through my mind as I'm wondering, do I fix this tire? And yeah, it's a bummer to buy a new tire, and I didn't plan on doing that 2 weeks into living in Colorado, but I think of what the alternative could be if I don't address it, things could get so much worse. And that's what it is with sin too, is if we recognize that something's there after it's been illuminated, after God has shown his light on us, and we don't address it, well, it just grows. And the eventual consequence is going to so much more overpower the pain and the shame that comes right now. And we're not denying that. We recognize that there is pain and shame and hurt now in confessing sin, but we just see over and over again that it just becomes so much worse if it's not addressed.
Yeah. So practically speaking, where do you go and how would you suggest someone to confess sin? Because you don't want to do that to everyone. You don't want to, you have to do that with a trusted, godly person in your own life.
Yeah. I've always encouraged people to find somebody that's worthy of the confession. So not everyone can receive your confession, because I view confession as a gift. You're giving a gift of yourself to someone that then is able to help you take maybe next steps forward, pray with you, know you a bit better. And so find someone who's worthy of the gift of confession and giving it to them. But this is part of living out the light, living as children of the light. Paul says it this way in Ephesians chapter 5, where he says, "Therefore do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true." There's some of the definition of light. What is good, right, and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of the things they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible, for anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, "Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." So there's some of the definitions of good, right, true, darkness, what is dead. Darkness is death. And part of being a child of light is to expose all the areas of darkness. And that goes first and foremost in our own life. So are there habits, are there behaviors in our own life that we intentionally hide from people, that like a nail in the tire, you're saying, Zach,
Yeah.
unless it goes treated, unless we confess it and bring it to the light and bring life to it, it could cause us some significantly more damage in our life. And one of the questions I would just ask people, any guy in my men's group, anyone in my life group, would just simply be, do you think you're a person that likes to be known, or are you a person that likes to hide? Are there things in your life that you don't let anyone know about? And then start asking yourself, why is that? Is there something I'm hiding because I'm just trying to get by? Can I just make it through the week? I'm so busy. I know how much time this is going to take if I confess these things to my wife, if I confess these things to a pastor or a trusted friend. But by the fact of not addressing them, you're actually causing more prolonged damage to your life.
Yeah, and I think when you do that, start with the simple, easiest things to confess and grow into the practice of confession, because I think it's a learned thing to slowly reveal who you are to that person that's worthy for that confession. But don't throw it all out at once. Continue to practice. Did they receive this? Did they take it and honor it? And did they help me through it? Is the questions you should be asking when you confess to someone. Yeah,
that's good. I mean, like we see in everything, and being a child of the light, it takes practice and it takes some easing into it because it's so contrary to what feels natural in our sinful selves, that we need practice to ease into it. It's the same reason why we don't start with a 1 week fast when you're trying to get into fasting. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, and don't jump into reading 10 chapters in the Bible right away either. Read simply just one at a time.
Yeah,
get it, build the habit,
but do it. So if you've never confessed your sins to a friend or a trusted member of the staff at the church, I would say mark your calendars, put a date on the calendar, put a time, reserve some of like time on your calendar to do it. Like, this needs to be done. It's not out of a religious tradition. It is out of the promise that even James tells us, confess your sins to one another that you might be healed. There is a healing that comes when we expose sin in our own life.
Yeah, children of light, that the life that's beyond confessing sin is what Jesus wants for us. Freedom, grace, truth, beauty, all those things come out of confession of sin. Guaranteed.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, let's turn the corner here. Thomas, what do we got coming up this week at Calvary as we talk about what's happening at Calvary?
All right, so we're going to have week 2 of our phased regathering that is safe and simple. We're still in this very first phase where we actually have abbreviated ministries, no cafe, a reduced worship team, and Calvary Kids is birthed through pre-K. If you have elementary kids or middle or high school, they're joining us in service. We have fun ways to engage them, keep them engaged in what we're doing on the weekend. I actually think this is a really beautiful time for the families of Calvary to bring their whole family into the church, that they would witness what is it that the church is and what does it look like to engage with God's people, his community. This week is going to be another week on the I am statements, and we're going to open up a 2-part section on the I am statements of I am the gate and I am the good shepherd, found in John chapter 10. So if you've got some time this week, read John chapter 9. You need John chapter 9, yep. John chapter 9 and John chapter 10 for this week.
Great. Zach, it's so good to meet you, hang out with you. I'm glad you're on staff.
Yes, so glad to be here. Emily and I are excited. If you see us and you've seen our picture posted places, say hi. We want to know who you are. We want to know how long you've been connected to Calvary, and we're learning this place. So help us see how beautiful this church is that we're loving already.
Great, man. I can't wait to see you online for all the campuses to see and hear you preach soon. So everyone look forward to that. That day is coming. And thanks, guys, for hanging out this Tuesday.
Yeah.
We love you, Calvary. Keep being people of the light.